this level of detail last time, and I believe one of you asked, you know, it'd be nice to see this, to just point out the basic uses. Here we've got the hotel here, so that would be kind of our main anchor, the credit union right here, and the convenience store, fast food, right there on the corner. Some things that are a little bit different about these in terms of their arrangement is, you know, again, having this building fronting the corner and having the pumps and things in the back. Now, I want to point out some other issues. There are some wetlands, or wet grounds, I guess. They haven't officially been called jurisdictional wetlands yet. But there's some wet ground on the site, and we planned for that in terms of leaving a lot of open space, because we knew that this probably wasn't a site that we could just come in and you know, fill the whole thing and do whatever we wanted. But we wanted to create an amenity with that for a couple of reasons. One reason is if we actually enhance it and preserve it, that's less that we have to mitigate, which costs money and can be a process in and of itself. But also so that it's an amenity for the development itself and provide some of that open space that's already required by your ordinance. But having said that, there's still some flexibility in these spaces in terms of what actually gets delineated and how much our clients are potentially willing to mitigate. But we worked with those things. The overall build out of this development is based upon the outlook that there will be a transit-oriented or a heavy rail stop here at some point. So having said that, some of the parking is pretty limited. Jay pointed us towards a couple of things initially. One was a TOD ordinance in Pleasant View. In Pleasant View, that's incredibly dense, like 50 units per acre, which, you know, to try to even visualize that on an agricultural site with nothing around it is a very difficult thing to do. And then also just thinking maybe more in the range of parking maximums. That's parking that can't exceed a certain number, rather than sort of the traditional idea of saying this is the absolute minimum parking that you need to have. Now, some of the parking, just to give you a sense, this hotel, we looked at 5 stories, but we think 4 stories is probably more feasible, which is about 100 beds, about a 75,000 square foot unit. Typical parking counts for a hotel or a ratio, a standard ratio, is about 1 stall per guest room. And so we have 108 stalls around that right now. So, you know, we're providing enough parking for some of these facilities. But again, some of this, especially with the retail or the mixed use, maybe some of these end up having to share future parking with the heavy rail parking area in off-peak times. So, you know, most of the parking for that heavy rail is going to be during the week, during the day, where most of the traffic coming to some restaurants or some other retail shops is going to be evening, primarily, probably weekend evening. And so there's the potential to share some of that parking. Another issue that was brought up is truck access. I mean, we haven't looked at specific detail because we don't know exactly, you know, what hotel footprint we'll be using. This is a square footage floor plate that we have, but we're not restricting any circulation by any means. I mean, trucks will be able to access service. Now, they might not be able to take that corner on 2 wheels at 30 miles an hour. The intent here and the whole idea behind pedestrian design is to create a scale that's a little bit tighter, that's not the 99-foot right-of-way that you can turn an ox team around in, which is kind of what we're all used to here in Utah. So, so there is a scale difference here, but the idea is that it's more pedestrian friendly. Any kind of a service vehicle could still pull into here. Let's say the hotel comes online first. There could be the potential, as Jay mentioned, that some of these other pads up here to the north end up being surface parking for the first 5 years, and they might facilitate parking for big rigs, because that's probably some of the initial traffic that they'll get. But the idea is that in the future, as that heavy rail track comes online, then those things will be phased out, and as there's more demand for retail and maybe even demand for some mixed use component, we want to be able to build that in right here, right now, by having that be an allocation for this land use as part of this PD. The other critical component to making this feasible is to start to get residential living in a proximity that would allow some of these people that live here to actually walk over here to access some restaurants, or walk over here to have to go to a shop. So again, kind of create that. Now that's not something that's going to happen overnight where this just all gets built. There's going to be some things that happen step by step. So to address phasing, which is that second page that I gave you, right now what we would like to see happen as a first phase, if you will, is to be able to move forward with going through the subdivision process and preliminary plat. It would break this into essentially 9 parcels or paths, which is pretty close to what you see here. And maybe some of that changes. Maybe the hotel one extends back into this open space more, and the onus of this open space is broken up a little more equitably. Some of that will be dependent on how the owners want to structure that owners association that'll end up paying for and maintaining that open space. So some of this might change, but the general idea being that there's a pad created for the hotel, there's a pad created for a service station, there's a pad created for the credit union, as well as some larger parcels here for some commercial mixed use, a parcel here for multifamily, and then some more retail parcels here, leaving one of these larger for the potential for heavy rail stop. Now, you know, the multifamily, for instance, that might be given to another developer that wants to come in, that's read through this document, is willing to go through the design process or the design review process, and is willing to adhere to the type of quality of design that the owners association wants to see. And at that time, they would come forward with a specific plan, which would show you all the building elevations. They would then subdivide again and probably break it up into a townhome plat so that these could be individual ownership. But that's not what we're proposing to do at this time. We're proposing to break it into one piece that would allow essentially 9 units per acre and 45 units, which is, did you give them the response? All those question responses?
Yeah, I think they both did.
So that was one of the questions that I know Dell had from last time. So, so right now the allocation would be that this could be multifamily attached, essentially approved for 45 units. So that means somebody could come in and do 40, somebody could come in and do 39, but somebody couldn't come in and do 80. So, and they would have to go through this design review process that we set up. The design review process is intended to take some of the burden off forward. We need to see a design review permit that's been approved from the Commons Owners Association. And Jay would sit on that, some design review professional would sit on that, and a member from your panel would sit on that that's been appointed. So, you know, there would still be the side. I think Jay's got, you know, a good sense of what your guys' interests are. Obviously someone from your board would have some input into that process and be able to come back and report to you guys as well. The other thing, another main question was, you know, is this dependent upon that heavy rail, and why would we want to address any kind of a layout prior to the heavy rail being specific? Our conversations with the heavy rail are that they understand and are willing to not be right here on the corner because they see the value of that property. Plus there's some access issues with UDOT in having any kind of access too close to the tracks. So UTA understands that. They do want to have a proximity to this and perhaps even a visibility from, you know, where you would cross these tracks, that you would be able to see that location. There's I think 3 mechanisms that they typically use where they're willing to lease property or purchase property or go into kind of a joint venture on constructing the parking lot on another person's property, or buy the property and have someone maybe lease some parking spaces back, that they've all implemented at different degrees, and none of that has been resolved yet at all. But having looked at that overall framework that I mentioned a minute ago, you know, this thing would really work if this thing were here, or if it were even north up here a little bit. We're wanting to show it here because obviously, let's say that could be the very impetus that would make the rest of this retail go. If the builder came in and did the hotel, the credit union was there, the service station was alive and kicking, there was interest in this, and then UTA came in and made this happen right on this parcel, and since it was already subdivided, our owners could respond to that and develop that agreement with them specifically. You know, that could be the driving force to then make this builder say, hey, yeah, we're ready to go, this would be a great thing that would make this happen. And some of these retail establishments would say, hey, you know, this is a perfect spot for Einstein's Bagels as all these people come